I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Bad news for the Trump SPAC Digital World Acquisition Company. It just announced in a filing with the SEC that it is entering into a settlement agreement with the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, for $18 million for violating certain anti-fraud provisions of the Securities and Exchange Commission Act relating to its unlawful pre-merger communications with Trump Media Group. But get this, even though Digital World Acquisition Company, the Trump SPAC, announced its intention to reach this settlement agreement pending approval by the full commission of the SEC, it states in the filing that Trump Media Group has not consented to the settlement agreement, and it is a required signatory for anything material under the amended operating agreement between the entities. Let me explain the violations that the Securities and Exchange Commission was investigating the Trump SPAC Digital World Acquisition Company for. I'll explain the settlement agreement, and I'll explain what appears to be a significant rift between Digital World Acquisition Company, which is admitting to wrongdoing. It is stipulating to violations of certain anti-fraud provisions. The rift between Digital World Acquisition Company and Trump Media Group. First, brief explanation of a SPAC. It's a special purpose acquisition company, also referred to as a blank check company. It is a vehicle to bring a private company public. The idea of these blank check companies or SPACs is that they are not having any communications at all with the target companies that they intend to merge with. In the S1 filing, the go public documents for these blank check companies, it simply is supposed to describe an industry sector that it is interested in exploring the opportunity to bring a private company public. This is what separates the go public route of a SPAC and distinguishes it from a traditional and more rigorous go public process for an initial public offering or an IPO. We recently reported about a Department of Justice unsealed indictment last week of numerous individuals for insider trading, and these individuals who were one individual had a board seat on Digital World Acquisition Company, the SPAC that was supposed to merge with Trump Media, had been saying that, oh, we're the Trump SPAC and we're going to be merging with Trump Media. This was before Digital World Acquisition Company, the SPAC, ever went public. So there were clearly communications that predated the announcement of a merger between Digital World Acquisition Company and Trump Media. What raised my suspicion from the outset is that when Trump Media and Digital World Acquisition Company announced that they were going to merge and Digital World Acquisition Company was going to bring Trump Media public, Truth Social hadn't even existed at that point. And usually in these SPAC transactions, the target company, the private company, has some history of financials. It has projections. It has revenue dating back several years. It has EBITDA. It has certain very basic bare minimum financial metrics. And in the go public documents, the S1 filing for the Digital World Acquisition Company SPAC, it said it was looking to merge with a company in the range of $400-500 million on the low end to $2 billion on the high end. Now, if Trump Media didn't even exist and Truth Social didn't even exist and had no revenue at all, had no profits at all, had no history of any financials at all, how was Digital World Acquisition Company going to justify to the shareholders who funded the SPAC that it was going to engage in this merger transaction where it said it was looking for $500 million to a $2 billion company, a company that has a valuation of that amount, if there were no communications prior to the merger announcement. And also, as I described when the merger was announced back in 2021, or the intention of the merger, I said, this looks like a pump and dump scheme. They're doing everything that seems to be unlawful when it comes to SPAC. All of these public statements and basically just flooding the zone of consumers and retail investors with just all of this kind of hype and all of this, I thought, disinformation. I said, this is everything that's not supposed to happen in a SPAC. And soon we learned that the SEC was engaged in a civil enforcement investigation. The Department of Justice was involved in a criminal investigation. And by the way, both still remain involved in those investigations. And this has pushed back the consummation of the merger between Digital World Acquisition Company, the SPAC, the blank check company, to merge with Trump Media to bring Trump Media public. And there is a significant amount of money on the line here. The SPAC has about $300 million in its trust account. That's the amount of money it raised to use that money to effectuate a merger pursuant to the terms of its S1, or kind of initial filing documents, where it was describing which type of company it wanted to merge with, but couldn't say what the specific company was. It was supposed to look into it. And also there's what's called a PIPE investment, a private investment in public equity. And this PIPE investment has certain private investors who have been given super favorable terms, far more favorable than any retail investors, who stated that if certain metrics are met, they would invest huge sums of money. But this SPAC, the valuation of the SPAC, or the stock price for the SPAC rather, went from $100 to $200 a share. It's now trading basically where all SPACs start. It's right around $10 a share. The last time I checked, it was $12 a share. But a complete and total failure. We've been describing it every way here on the MeidasTouch network, and we predicted from the outset that there were these unlawful pre-merger communications between Trump Media and the SPAC Digital World Acquisition Company. Also, a whistleblower, a real whistleblower, one of the founders at Trump Media, somebody by the name of Will Wilkerson, who was part of a consortium of a few people who brought this idea to Donald Trump. He's been cooperating with the SEC and the DOJ, and he stated that there were these improper pre-merger communications, which of course informed our knowledge of this improper conduct. And so one of the reasons why Trump Media may not be consenting to the settlement agreement is, one, it's essentially stipulating that fraud was being committed, and two, it creates massive, I think, criminal exposure, in my opinion, for those involved at Trump Media engaged in unlawful communications with the SPAC. And if you read between the lines here, it seems that the SPAC itself, Digital World Acquisition Company, is trying to now reduce the liability of all of its board members and people associated with it, even if that means perhaps throwing those who still remain at Trump Media, hint, hint, Trump, under the bus. And this settlement agreement in no way, shape, or form will in any way stop the Department of Justice's ongoing criminal investigations into Digital World Acquisition Company and Trump Media. This doesn't end all other SEC investigations. Those will continue as well. This doesn't provide a clean path for a merger between Digital World Acquisition Company and Trump Media. In fact, a few weeks back, Digital World Acquisition Company announced in another filing that it was requesting the date of the merger supposed to be, was already extended like a year to September 8th. And already Digital World Acquisition Company saying, let's make that September 8th, not of 2023, which is the date under the bylaws when the merger has to occur, but let's make that to September 8th of 2024. In addition to paying $18 million under the settlement agreement, Digital World Acquisition Company would be required to amend its S1 filing, that's the initial filing, its S4 filing, which is the merger filing between Digital World Acquisition Company and Trump Media. And again, one of the reasons I think why Trump Media wants nothing to do with this settlement is because they would be admitting to misconduct that they are worried about for criminal exposure all the way up to Donald Trump. This was the filing that was just made by Digital World Acquisition Company. It says, and this was an 8K form published on the SEC website. As previously disclosed, Digital World Acquisition Company has been the subject of an investigation by Securities and Exchange Commission with respect to certain statements, agreements, and the timing thereof included in the company's registration statements of Form S1 in connection with its initial public offering, the IPO, and Form S4 relating to the business combination between the company and Trump Media and Technology Group Corp., TMTG. In connection with the investigation, Digital World Acquisition Company has reached an agreement in principle with the staff of the SEC Division of Enforcement. The terms of this settlement in principle are not yet definitive, as a final settlement agreement is subject to the approval by the Commission, and the company cannot predict whether or when it may obtain the Commission's approval. If the Commission approves the settlement in principle, it will enter a cease and desist order finding the company violated certain anti-fraud provisions of the Securities Act and Exchange Act in connection with the company's IPO filings on Form S1 and the Form S4 concerning certain statements, agreements, and omissions relating to the timing and discussions the company had with TMTG regarding the proposed business combination. That's what I was saying earlier in this video. Pre-merger communications or pre-merger communications before the IPO is announced is per se unlawful. And here in the S1 form where the IPO was announced, they're going to have to go back and amend that now. It goes on to say, in connection with the settlement in principle, if the company amends its previously filed S4, it will ensure that any such Form S4 will be materially complete and accurate and consistent with the findings in the order, and pay a civil money penalty and an amount of $18 million to the SEC promptly after closing of any merger or a comparable business combination or transaction, whether with TMTG or any other entity. Section 5.2 of the Agreement and Plan of Merger, dated as of October 20th, 2021, entered by and among the company and the parties therein, as amended on May 11, 2022, provides that without the prior consent of Trump Media, such consent not to be unreasonably withheld, conditioned, or delayed, the company shall not settle or compromise any claim, action, or proceeding, including any suit, action, claim, or proceeding, or investigation relating to the merger agreement or the transaction contemplated thereby, in excess of $100,000. As such, the company, meaning Digital World Acquisition Company, has kept the Trump Media Group apprised of the discussions with the Commission and the settlement in principle. Nevertheless, Trump Media is not a party to the settlement in principle or any related negotiation, and it has not provided its consent to such settlement. Although the company believes that it has complied with Section 5.2 of the merger agreement, TMTG, Trump Media, may disagree and try to terminate the merger agreement. And then it goes on to say the company and its board of directors and management strongly believe the settlement in principle is in the best interest of Digital World Acquisition Company shareholders, Accordingly, the board of directors has authorized management to proceed forward with the settlement in principle. And what this means, folks, though, also reading between the lines, is that it looks like Digital World Acquisition Company could be headed for litigation against Trump Media, because Digital World Acquisition Company is saying, we're going to settle with the SEC and we're going to get this consent decree against us where we're found to have engaged in wrongdoing with Trump Media. Trump Media isn't consenting to it under Section 5.2 of the agreement. They can't withhold their consent unreasonably. We believe they're withholding it unreasonably. Our board of directors at the SPAC, regardless of the fact that the target company we're supposed to merge with is not supportive of the agreement, we don't care what Trump says. We don't care what Trump Media says. We're going ahead with the settlement agreement with the SEC where this wrongdoing is going to be found. Wrongdoing committed by both Digital World Acquisition Company and Trump Media regarding these communications, unlawful communications, before the announcement of the IPO, before the announcement of that Digital World Acquisition Company was going public. So this is big, folks. I mean, as I've always said, I never thought this merger was going to happen. This seems to reinforce that right here. It seems like it's going to get messy, going to be lots of litigation. And here you have the company saying, look, Trump did it. Trump Media did it too. Look, they engaged in this conduct. So big news. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 1.5 million subscribers. Thanks to your support. Check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Wherever you get audio podcasts, subscribe to the MeidasTouch podcast. Have a great day.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.